afternoon. Welcome to this week's Tuesday tutorial. Not live, and we'll be back live next week as normal at 5:30 on every Tuesday. So this week we're looking at pigeon pose. So pigeon pose is a really nice deep hip opener. So it stretches kind of everything around in and around your hips, so your bum, your thighs. It also stretches your hip flexors, which are deep muscles that help us to bend and extend our legs and to fold forwards. So if you work at a desk a lot, if you've been particularly inactive in recent months because we're in lockdown and maybe you're only just getting back to work or you're still working from home, there's a lot of sitting down, so it's a really nice pose to counteract all the sitting down that we do. It's also a really nice pose to help with back pain. So if you have lower back pain, sometimes that can be because you have really tight hip flexors. So as you lengthen them, that can give you more space in the spine and stops your bum from sticking out and gets rid of that pelvic tilt. So I want to start by showing you how we get into the pose. I'll explain the pose to you, and then I'm also going to give you a variation for tricky knees. So I want to start by taking my right leg forward. So often we'll come into the pose from downward dog. So my right knee is behind my right wrist, and my right ankle is somewhere close to my left wrist, so it's kind of behind it somewhere. Now, first thing, something that people often think is that the shin absolutely has to be parallel to the top of the mat. That's not necessarily the case, and that can be really quite uncomfortable or / unachievable. So it can actually be closer towards your body. The further away from your body, so the closer to parallel the leg is, the shin is to the top of the mat, the more of an intense stretch you'll feel, especially down. For me, it's in my bum. The closer it is towards you, the more of a gentle stretch you'll feel. So that's not to say don't push yourself, don't hold back. So go to your edge, find your edge and stay there. The foot is flexed. So my right foot is flexed. So that when I say flex, it means it's active. It means that I have a sort of a right angle between the shin and the top of the foot. And that helps to protect the knee because I've got this external rotation of my thigh, and then my knee and my shin is going in opposite direction, so that can put a bit of pressure on the knee. So flexing the foot activates the muscles that protect the knee. Now, very often, what we like to do when we're in pigeon pose is to just sink into the hip and relax there. That's not what we want to do. So we want to keep the hip lifted. And the reason for that is because that helps to keep our hips square. So if you think you've got some headlights on your hip bones or some guns, as we sink into the right hip, can you see that my hip bones are now off center? They're not facing forwards anymore. So I want to keep the hip lifted so that my hips face forwards. The more open the hip is, the closer to the floor you'll get your bum, and your hips will still face forwards, and that's fine. If your hip is quite far off the ground and it's quite hard to, especially if you've taken your foot quite far forwards to get that parallel shin or closer to parallel, that means that your hip will lift even higher. In order to keep the hip square, the hip bone square, the right hip will lift even higher up off the mat. I'll turn around to demonstrate it. So sank into the floor, ever so comfortable, more active, hips are pointing forwards. Now my right hip is off the ground. But if I shuffle my right shin forwards even more, then in order to keep my hips square, I need to I need to really keep my hip lifted. So that's really quite active. When we want to be able to relax into the pose, soften into it. So it is not cheating if you take a block, place it under your hip. That allows you to get that deeper stretch if that's where you're at, while keeping the hip square so you don't lose the stretch by just sinking into the hip. The back leg can be lengthened out. It can have a little bend in it if you need to. Now, options here, you can inhale and lift your chest. So find a nice long spine. That will deepen the stretch a little bit. And then you can stay here. This might be more than enough of a stretch, so there's no pressure to go any further. If you want to take it further, then you can fold forwards. But it's like a melting forwards. So sending the chest towards the shin or over the shin, maybe bringing the forehead down towards the mat or onto a block or a cushion so that you're more comfortable. If if you're pregnant and baby is starting to press into your front leg as you start to fold forwards, then don't fold, or don't fold quite so far, because we don't want to press baby into the shin. So that is your, obviously do it on both sides. So that is your bog standard pigeon pose. If you've got anything going on with the knee, so it might be that you're working with an injury that you know about, or it might be that you do pigeon pose and you find that your knee hurts, the front knee, so the knee that's bent on the side that's being stretched. If that's you, then what we're going to do is we are going to get yourself into pigeon pose, but take the hip, the front hip, all the way down to the mat. So we are going to sink into it, but then we're going to shuffle the shin forwards until it is parallel to the short edge of the mat. Keep the foot flexed, so we've got that right angle between the shin and the top of the foot. Interlace your fingers around the ball of the foot. Really press into the ball of the foot. Take an inhale, lift your chest, and then as you exhale, start to fold forwards, and really think about sending your chest bone towards the front foot. And that, you can really press into the foot, and that helps to give a bit of activation into the knee, a little bit of protection to the knee. And as you fold, you'll feel the exact same stretch as you felt in pigeon pose, but you have more protection for the knee. And none of this pigeon for like 5 breaths. Hold it. The longer you hold it, the more you can relax into it. Just stay with your breath and relax more and more into it. So you might find that your bum becomes really tense when you're in it, because that's where you're aware that all the stretching is happening. The more you can relax it, the more deeply and more comfortably you'll go into the pose. If you have any questions, then let me know. If you have any requests for anything you'd like me to cover next week, then let me know. Either pop it in the comments or send me a message. I'm very lovely and I'm here to help. Bye.